Hi everyone, I am Vartika. I have total around 13 years of experience in testing, out of which 5 years with UiPath, and with UiPath Test Suite and Test Manager, it's 2 years. So today, let me share my screen. So in today's agenda, what we have is API testing using UiPath Test Suite. So in this session, we will cover what is API, what is API testing, and why should we need of doing API testing, and how can we do API testing using UiPath Test Suite. So let's get started. So what is API? So when we come with this term, then API stands for Application Programming Interface. So API is a software to software interface, not a user interface. With API, applications talk to each other without any user knowledge or intervention. So to make these statements in a simpler language, let me explain you with an example. So nowadays we are connected to everything. Uh, we are connected to everything, and using this connectivity from desktop, mobile, or any other device, we can purchase anything, we can post anything, we can pin and pick anything from anywhere. So we are connected to the world and each other like never before. But how does this happen? How does the data goes from here to there? How do different devices and applications connect with each other to allow us to place an order, to book reservation, to book flight? So behind all these things comes the API. API is what makes all the interconnectivity or interactivity we have come to expect and rely upon. So, speak plainly, an API is a messenger that take requests and tells the system what you wants to do and then returns the response back to you. So to give you a familiar example, let's think of API as a waiter. So suppose you are sitting in a restaurant at a table with a menu card where you want to order the food of your choice. And the kitchen is the part of the system where you will from where you will get your food. So you want to order the food and kitchen will deliver. But what is missing here? The critical communication link between you and the kitchen, you as a user and the kitchen as a provider. So the waiter, in our case, will fulfill this requirement. So the waiter will communicate your order to the kitchen and then get the food from the kitchen to your table. So here the waiter or API works as a messenger where it takes the request from the user and uh, and deliver to the system and then take the response from the system and provide it to the user. So whenever you think of an API, think of it as a waiter, which is taking your request back and forth between applications or databases and devices to deliver data and create the connectivity. So API is that makes it possible for all us to, book a flight from any website or make reservation in hotels or, any interaction between the applications, whatever we see nowadays is possible because of APIs. So in very plain language, I have explained what is API. Now, what is API testing? So as we all know that API is nothing, just a logic or a messenger that takes the request from user to the takes a request from the user and and then get the response from the application and again provide it and again provide response to the user. So to understand API testing, so an API treats the component under test as a black box because it's not a user interface, and it's not a user interaction. It's just software to software interaction. So we will call it as a black box testing. So, so to understand this, also I'll give an example. So let's take an example of Amazon website. Where I guess you all guys must have used that this website. So when we try to log in into the Amazon website, it provides us options from where we can use it. We can log in into it with our Google account or with a Facebook account, or some other options are there. So by giving and even when you log in, when you download some applications from Play Store, you would have seen that in many applications they provide you that facility where you can log in using your Google account. So what is that? Google will what will you do? You will just provide you will just say that, yeah, I want to log in into this website using my Google account, and the application will allow you to log in into that. So what we are doing in this case, we are taking Google's help, Google's API help to log in into a website. So the Google team has already written that API. We are using that API. So as a test, and once we are able to log in into that website. So here what we are doing, we are utilizing Google's API. And being a tester of the application, my job would be to check whether am I able to log in into that website or not. I'm getting the proper response. What is the response time? All the security and performance, all these things I need to check as a tester. So the purpose of API testing is to check the functionality, reliability, performance, and the security of the programming interface. So goal of API testing is to verify whether we are getting the correct response for our request, the data format is correct for that, or all the securities and functionality as well. So using this Amazon example, I'll explain you what is API testing. So next is common types of tests in API. So when you write any test case or test scenarios, what all the points you should keep in mind for API testing is, first is functionality. Verify whether API return any response or not. Then if you are getting any response, the response should be checked. Based on the input request, are you getting the correct response or not? Are you getting the correct data, whatever you have requested or not? So this would be the second test case. And in some cases, API triggers some other APIs as well. So while testing that, we should keep in mind that whether the connectivity between both the APIs are done or not, whether we are getting response from another API. So all these things are there. Then the verification of API, whether it is updating any data structure. So if we are updating any data structure, so the response we are getting should be also in structured data. And last not the least is security, performance, and security issues, like is there any delay in API response? Are we getting response in time? Is there any security breach or not? What is the performance of this API? So all these things comes under API testing. Now, why should we do API testing? So API testing is an important activity that testing teams should focus on. it offers a number of advantages over other kind of testing. So API testing is very different from GUI test, where in GUI you can look and feel the application. You can see it from your eyes, whatever data you are entering and not. But API testing is very different from GUI testing. GUI testing works at the presentation layer, where you can see your application, your form, your data, and all. Whether the API testing works on business layer. So, business layer, where instead of using standard user inputs like keyboard or standard outputs, you use software to send calls to API and get output and note down the system's response. So it's not using those keyboards input and output, it is using the software to send the request and get the response. So it mainly concentrates on the business logic layer of the software architecture. So what are the advantages of API testing? Why should we do API testing? So first advantage is language independent. Language independent means because data is exchanged via XML or JSON, via XML or JSON, any language can be used for automation because it is independent. In any language, you can develop your logic, but when API comes, it uses XML or JSON file. So it is language independent. Then as I mentioned you that it is GUI independent. GUI is graphical user interface, where API testing can be done to check the core functionality of the application. So in API testing, some small errors or something that can be missed during our testing can be covered under API testing. And so once we did the API testing, then that API can be integrated with GUI and your application is ready to deploy in any environment you want to deploy. The next is improved test coverage. So as in using API testing, we can cover, because we know the request and the response, the data, the structure of the data, and we can check performance as well. So it covers most of the test cases, and most APIs have features that allow a tester to create automated tests with high test coverage, including positive and negative test cases. So we can rarely find test cases that can't be automated using API testing. The next one is reduced testing cost. So with API testing, we can find minor bugs before the GUI testing. So, and you never know, these minor bugs can become bigger during the GUI testing. So finding those bugs while performing API testing is very cost effective. So it reduced the testing cost. And then enable faster releases. As it is not dependent on GUI, it works in the backend. So suppose any test case with GUI takes around 10 to 10 hours while executing UI regression testing. With API, it will take only 1 or 2 hours because it's not dependent on GUI where you wait for the website to load and then enter the data and then click submit and then response comes. So all these steps are not there. So time is very less in API testing, where you just send your plain request in XML or JSON format to the software and get the response in the same format. So all the GUI time, whatever the website will take, is not there. So it enables faster releases because testing is fast in that case. So API testing is really important phase of testing process. But how is API testing carried out? So that we will see how we do API testing automation using UiPath. So with UiPath, there are 3 ways where we can carry out our API test automation. So first one is using as a Swagger. So developer will provide you the Swagger file where you can import the Swagger file as a service, and whatever the endpoints are there, they will be converted into activity, and using those activities, you can perform your testing in UiPath. And the HTTP request in form of HTTP request as well, we can perform our testing in UiPath. And the next one is using Postman, because for API, Postman is very useful tool. So UiPath can also integrate with Postman, and we can carry out a automation testing from there. So let's see a practical example of all these threes. How can we carry out a test automation using UiPath? So this is the test suite for UiPath, where you have given where you will be in test case XAML, you will be provide the given, when, and then sequence. In given, you can provide your prerequisites like the any authentication, username, password, or any environment related activities that can be done once. So in the given part, you can provide that. In the when part is all the processing part of the application is there, and then we will verify the outcome, whether we get the expected outcome from the application or not. So to start with the Swagger thing, this is the API for UI Bank, demo bank. So here we will take a test case of get the loan code, where according to your rate, according to your age, your loan requirement, and your income, the bank will give you the rate of interest. That at this rate of interest, you will be provided the loan, or whether you are eligible or not according to the criteria. So this is UI Bank API. So this is Swagger file. Swagger file looks like this. This developer will provide the Swagger file for their application. So in new service, we'll give the link for this Swagger file. And click on load. So it will load all the endpoints. So for account, there are 9 endpoints, like and so whatever the endpoints you want, endpoints is nothing, just a request, different kind of requests, like this address count, address update, address replace. So these are different kind of requests that you want to send to this application and get the response. So whatever the endpoints or requests you want to test, you can import in UiPath using the service editor. So right now we are importing all, and you can provide any namespace according to your requirement. So we are giving this as user bank Swagger API. Okay, and then click on save. So it will import all the endpoints to the UiPath, and it will create activity for all the endpoints. So these endpoints can be used as activities in UiPath, and we can do testing on those activities. So let's wait for it to import this endpoints. Okay, so if you go to activities, default activities, UI Bank Swagger API. This we have just imported from this new services. So here it has created different activities for every endpoint. So for account, there were 9 endpoints. So for account, there are 9 activities. So we will use this quote activity, where we will provide our age, income, and loan and everything, and we'll check whether how much rate of interest we will be given by the bank for this. So I'll just drag and drop this activity in the when section. So here we need to provide the endpoint. So endpoint is our API address. So this is our endpoint. So before slash, we will give the endpoint. And in request, you can see what all the input parameters is required. So like age, amount, email, income, and term. So suppose age is 32. Amount is, let's say, 2000. Email income, let's say 9,000. And term is for how long you want to take the loan. Suppose 3 years. And response, here in response, we will create a variable and the response will be will store in this. So I have already created one. So yeah. Sorry. This is not string, so okay. And so in then portion, we will check the output of this requirement. So for this, we will get 3 lines of response. We will get accepted, whether the loan is accepted or not. So it's a Boolean value. So its value would be true and false. The rate of interest and port ID, which is a unique ID. So in then section, we will verify those requests, those output. So API output dot accepted string. So it's a Boolean value. So we'll verify it whether it is true or false. We'll verify. So we have there is no GUI, nothing for this application. Using this endpoint and all these parameters, we will test this application. So I'll run this file. Okay, so it's a case sensitive. So our the loan is accepted and the value is true is matching what we are expecting. We are expecting that the output of this this request should be true. So the output is true, matching with the actual output. So like this, we verify our testing using the Swagger file. So right now here we are hard coding the values. What if we have n numbers of data to verify? So for that, we can use the data-driven testing. In data-driven testing, we will store our data in an Excel where age, income, term, everything will be in Excel, and our test suite will take the data one by one and process the request. So for that, let me show you one data file. So this is the data file where we have provided that what is the type of test case. So first test case is positive, second is negative, and this is straight through, the user is too young. So all these variation description, why it is not provided the loan, the age, amount, email, income, loan term, everything is there in the data sheet. So our test case is to verify whether using this data, are we getting these fields from the application and in the response or not. Are we getting these fields as expected? Like for this combination of data, age 40, amount 5,000, income this, loan rate is 7%. So when using this data, are we from application, are we getting the expected response or not? That we will test. So what in that case, what we'll do, we will, this is, so we'll update the test data, and from file, we'll pick up this file. So all the data will come here. So like how many data you want to test, you can select from here. You can check whatever data you want to test, how much and what is the requirement, and then import. So once you import the data, in arguments section, the column name will come as a UiPath will create it as a arguments. So using this argument, you can carry out your data-driven testing, where these arguments will provide in this input. So for age, will provide the age from the argument. For amount as well, will provide it. Again for email, then income, and last term. Loan. Okay, so all these arguments we have provided as input parameters. So what this test case will do, it will take the data row one by one from the Excel, from the data we have uploaded, and it will check this for all the 4 data rows. And in verify expression, we will verify the accepted outcome is equals to the one from the Excel sheet. So in Excel sheet is verify loan accepted. And if loan is accepted, so interest rate also be there. So if loan is accepted, then we will verify whether the interest rate we are getting from the UI Bank application is as expected as we have provided the interest rate in the Excel sheet. So again, we will use the verify expression with operator activity. Here we will check that the output dot rate verify loan rate. Okay, so now let me run this test case and we'll see. And while running this test case, we'll use run file with data variation, because this time we will use the data we have imported from the Excel file. So I'll run it for all 4 rows and check the output of this. So for first, it is passed because value true is equals to true and rate is 7. For second, it is false because that was negative test case where the user was not allowed to take the loan. So again, it is very from website we are getting false, and in Excel it was given false. So this test case also passed. Third test case was also negative test case where the user was not the loan amount high, I guess. So he was not allowed to provide the loan. So again, this test case passed. False we are getting from the web from the application, UiBank application, and false is what is expected. And for the third one, it is true. The loan was accepted, and the rate is 4 coming from the UiBank application, and 4 what is expected from our data. So like this, we can do the API and see these 4 test cases completed within seconds. So it didn't take too much time. And but in case of GUI, it will log in into the website, open open the page, then page will get load, then it will enter these age, amount, email, everything. So it takes time. But with API testing, it completed within seconds. So this is the first method using the Swagger file. How can we do API testing in UiPath? The second one is using the HTTP request. So for HTTP request, again, there's prerequisite that this web API activity, this package should be there in your XAML file, in your project. So web API activity, we can store from manage packages. From there, we can import this activity. And once this activity is imported, this package been imported. So there's HTTP request activity is there in activity panel. So we'll use this activity. So here again, we need to provide some input data for our request. So first is endpoint. Endpoint is nothing, just your API URL. So in our this UiBank API, if we go to explore API, so there are these are the modules, and in every module there would be endpoints. So right now we are using the code 1. So in code 1, we are using this new code. So for this new code, this is the output where we are getting accepted, whether it is true or false, the rate of interest, and code ID. Code ID is a unique ID for that particular request. And these are the parameters what is required in that API to get the response. So suppose amount is 1,000, term is 3, income is 8,000, age is 25. So this is our request URL. this URL will use in our API request. So this was the request, and this is the response. So the interest rate for this particular set of data is 11%. I'll copy this request URL and paste in their endpoint. So accept requirements JSON parameters. So these are the parameters that we need to define. So I'll copy the name from here only, and parameter amount term com page email. These APIs also developer will provide you to carry out your testing. So page. So you can preview your request whether you have provided everything or not. So here I'm getting error. Let me check the request URL.
Method, I think method. Request method.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, it should be post because we are posting the request. So method should be post. Yeah, now we are getting the response. So for HTTP request, we need to provide the end URL, the endpoint, the method, and the parameters if they are. So I'll click on OK. And from here also you can provide the URL and everything. So here in parameters, as you can see, the parameters we have created are there. So the output for this will save in the response content. So we'll create a variable for that response content. Okay, so the output would be in JSON format, which is not in readable one. So we'll deserialize the JSON and extract the response, whatever we want to carry out our testing. So for that, I'll use the activity deserialization, deserialize JSON. So here the input would be the output of this activity, that is response content, and JSON object. We'll create a variable here, response JSON object. So if you want to see how does it the response looks, Let me run this activity. So this is the response we are getting. Accepted true, rate 11 or port ID. Okay. So using this response, again, we can verify whether we are getting the correct response or not. So then activity, I'll copy from there only. So this is the so here also we can import the data, upload the data sheet, and then verify the response from the website, whether it is coming as expected or not. So I'll take verify expression with operator. Here we need to check the output for accepted. So in double quotes, I'll write sorry, not response content, JSON object. Response JSON object. Accepted. And we will verify it with our verify loan accepted. Okay, and again here, if you want to do it for multiple data, just parameters, just replace this hard-coded value with the arguments like amount, loan term, okay. So we'll run with data variations. So for all 4 rows, it is ran successfully and provided the response and verified it whether test cases pass or fail. So this one method is for using HTTP request, how API testing is done in UiPath. The last one is Postman one, where this is Postman, where the collection is created, the URL for that particular request, whether it is a post or get, and the parameters. Parameters we have defined in using the variables in our environment. So this is the environment where we have created the variables. These are the input variables, and accepted rate and quote ID are the output variables. So once these variables are created that we have given in the extra. So all these things, if your developer has used the Postman and it has all the request or collection in the Postman, so it will provide you this collection. So using the Postman API, you can import this collection in UiPath, and again, UiPath will create the activity for all the endpoints, and the same way we did for Swagger and HTTP, you can use different data sets and do the testing for your test cases and verify the results. So again, I'll go to new service, and here I need to provide the API for that Postman. So this is the API key for my Postman. So I'll give this API key and click on load. So whatever the endpoints are there, it will import here. So we just need for new code. So we'll not import these two and import just UI bank new code, and we'll provide the namespace for this Postman activity and click on save. So now if we go to the default activities, this is Postman client new code. This is the activity we have just imported from a Postman, and this it has created as the request. What is there in UiPath is imported as an activity. In Postman, it is imported in UiPath as an activity. So we'll just drag and drop this activity. Again, for input, so whatever the input variables we have defined there are here. This one is also come as input, so we'll delete this. We don't require this in our input. So these are the input parameters, and output I'll tell you, and environment. So in Postman, the environment is UI bank demo. So the same environment needs to be given in the UiPath. So in this, I'll provide the environment name under the UI bank demo. So the environment is one input. Then an input, let me import add test data. So let me import the test data in this sample. So it has created the argument for that. So in the input collection, we'll provide the arguments. Income. And in. So it will take the data from the Excel, and in output, the variables what we have created in Postman are this accepted, rate, and quote ID. So these similar will create here. Accepted, rate, and quote ID. And the value of these parameters will assign in our out arguments. So we'll create arguments out underscore accepted. Because I have already created. Code ID. Okay, what we can do. Okay. And again, and then we can verify these with the Excel output. So accepted is equals to verify loan accepted. Okay. So now let me run this XAML. Okay, because of the case, it is not verifying it. So in that verification, we can write that we can ignore the case. Because of the case, it is not verifying it. Otherwise, true is equals to true, false is equals to false. So like this, using Postman API also, we can do. There is one more method where these activities, we can, create library for these activities. And every time you want to test for any of the endpoint, just importing the libraries from managed packages, we can use those. So all these input things will be their requests and the output would be their response. So this is how the testing in UiPath done for API using Swagger, Postman, and HTTP request.
Any question from anyone? Maybe you can unmute yourself and you can ask the question. I think there is one question, Vartika.
Yeah.
Srujana has asked how you got the API key in the website.
Okay, so the website, you mean to say in this UiPath?
Yeah, HTTP request API testing.
In UI Bank application.
Okay, these APIs, those will be given, if you are a tester, so those will be given you by the developers. Developer will develop the API and will give you the URL for that. So this will be provided by the developer, all these things. So who develops the API will provide you a Swagger file and these APIs. So once you get this link, after that, you can start your testing.
The question is related to the UI bank only. So how you got the API key for the UI bank?
Okay, for UI Bank, if you go to the UiPath Academy, so they have used the same example using for UI Bank. So from UiPath Academy, you can get the API. And if you want, I can share the link in the chat. So you can also. I have shared this link in the chat, so you can also start exploring.
Okay, any other question from anyone?
So in Postman, have you authenticated?
For this API, no authentication is required. So in Postman, I have not authenticated, but if authentication is required, then in Postman you can authenticate. Even in UiPath also, there is, first, if you go to this HTTP request, this authentication is there. So, but for this API, authentication was not there. So I have not authenticated the Postman.
But for client point of view, the authentication will be required. So you have to need either secure password or secured ID or key is fine. So totally depending on their organization structure.
That's the thing I want to ask. Suppose we have the client, so there is authentication, so we can't can we use API without authentication?
See, if they will enable the authentication, definitely you have to use it. If
So
it
from
was not,
backend, okay, so from backend client will approve our request, so we
yeah.
can okay, sure, sure. Okay.
So probably when we are working on the client side, they will not ask you to enable it from the back end. So they will provide you the secure ID and password, which is having some duration. Within that duration, that is going to be expired. So
Okay.
totally depending on the organization structure, how they will enable it for you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other question from anyone? Okay, if you don't have anything, maybe you can proceed with the quiz. So I will present my screen and
Excuse me. Hello.
yeah.
Uh, in Postman, see, you by using UiPath application bank. Okay. In that we are exploded to API. Okay. But how are you going to create requests? Because it is asking authorization always. When we are practicing, we would like to create some collections, like create a user or a loan like that. But it is asking authorization.
So over there, the link which is shared by the Vartika, it's already having the key. So by using that key, you can authorize it.
I have already tried it. Actually, the same link only I'm also working on for so that I'm not able, I'm unable to authorize that. So it is always showing me unable to authorize. So that is the doubt.
Actually, the request for UI bank, it is using no auth for the collection.
Even with that also I have tried, but even it's showing the same response. No authorization like that.
So you are
So
using
once can you show me the Postman integration once?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so here in Postman, if I go to authorization, no authorization.
But for me, when I'm working for it, it's not showing like this.
Yeah, that's why I asked, are you using a company system or you're using your personal system?
My personal system.
Personal system. Okay.
Maybe type should vary. Under the authorization, please select the type. So please show what's the type is selected.
Yeah, if you have selected API key, then definitely you have to
Yeah.
find the API key. And no auth.
So
Either you can
yeah,
select no auth or inherit.
yeah.
I have selected no authorization only present.
Can you select and try with an inherit?
Inherit auth.
For the link, where did you get this link? That UI Bank app API/codes.new code. From where did you get this URL?
This URL, if you go to the API website, you go to the Explore API, then code. So here, whatever endpoint you want, you just try it out, and the request URL we provided will be there. Like for this, actually, these all information needs to be there. So once we try it out, this is the request URL. So this is the API URL for that particular endpoint.
So one question from my side. Okay. Proceed, please proceed.
And make sure whenever you are keeping the post, method is also same. So if you are trying from here as a post method, so exactly same thing you have to try it for the postman as well. If you are trying for the get method, try with the get only.
So in the coding in the UiPath in the test framework, see here did the post method, and regarding the post method, all the fields has been created once. So why the in the UiPath Studio, if we do a same work, then with the same you can say with the same data, why it's able to create? It should give an error now. It should give an error that the data has been already be succeeded or something like that. So try out another data because it will be a redundancy by the UI bank.
Yeah, so it's totally depending on the backend structure as well. So if in database, it's already allowed. See, this is a public URL and everyone is using. So UiPath cannot make sure that any person who is trying to enter the data will not be seen. So might be they have allowed this URL to accept the redundant data as well. That's the possibility. See,
Okay.
if it is not allowed from the backend end and backend is throwing an error, API is showing that same error with our screen as well.
Okay, maybe cookies being deleted afterwards, like
Yeah,
that.
that's true. So when you're working with the actual system, that time you
Hmm.
might get an error because of the redundant data.
Okay.
Okay. Any other question from anyone?
Here SSL certification is there no. In Postman, here HTTP request SSL certificate is there no. When to make false and when to make true.
So, see, if your organizations, that is totally depending on the coding structure as well. So, SSL certification is required for the browser end. If your API or if your API, which is connected with the web-based applications, where the SSL certification is enabled, so without that certification, even we cannot work with the API call as well. So, if that certification is disabled, a few of the organizations is not allowing us to make it disable. So within the collections, whenever the development team will share with the API request, within that they will include the SSL certificates as well. So totally depending on your particular application on which you are working. So if it is enabled, you have to get the SSL certification enabled collections. If it is disabled, it will work without even certificates.
Thank you.
Any other question from anyone? Okay, if you are good, let's go ahead with the questionnaire and quiz sessions. Please participate within it. Thank you, Vartika, for delivering this nice sessions and covering all the important points on the API automation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
So hope you everyone can see my screen.
Yes, Deepak.
Just go to Mentimeter and use the code 8427 and 1 second. Systems. Yeah, 1 second. I'll ping a code 1 second. 84278015. Use this code. 84278015. That's the code.
Deepak, can you ping the URL and as well as the code
Yeah.
in chat?
8427. Just go to the menti.com. quick. We have just 7 in. Make sure to participate it. The reason behind it, we are keeping this questionnaire use. One is goodies from the UiPath and team, and second one is to check it how much you have grasped with the session. In another 1 minute, I will open the questions. Code is 84278015. Okay, let's start. Okay, I'm starting first with first question. In which layer of the software architecture API testing works? We have 3 options: presentation layer, business layer, and database layer. Be quick. Time's up. Okay, the right answer is business layer. Tushar is leading the please. Let's move to the next question. In UiPath, what all are the methods to API testing? REST, service swagger, HTTP request, Postman integration, and all of the above. Right answer is all of the above. We have discussed, and even Vartika has shown 3 examples on all of the content. Let's see the leaderboard. Now this time position change. Gayatri is leading the questions with 1904 points. Let's move to the third question. Using API testing response, data is not structure. True or false? True. I think this time it's big change in the leaderboard. Again, Tushar is leading with Siddhesh, and Gayatri is on third position. And last question. What are the benefits of API automation testing? GUI independent, time effective, minimize cost, and all of the above. Simplest one. Now the right answer is all of the above. Let's see the leaderboard. Okay, final leaderboard is Tushar is the winner, then Siddhesh and Gayatri, and fourth one is Prankul. So please share me your email ID so that I can share with the UiPath team to share the goodies with you. Thank you all for joining the sessions, and make sure to attend further sessions on test series or UiPath test series or test suits. So next session will be on 28th with UiPath integration with the ALM tools and reporting, then CI/CD pipeline, and at the end we have Ask Me Anything on test suit. So thanks again for everyone to joining the sessions, and make sure to share on social media about your feedback and about the sessions. Thanks again. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the session. Thank you.
Kindly share your email ID, please. Yeah.